Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I'm a comic book artist, writer, creator, and I share my creative process here with you on the internet. If you'd like to support this channel, get additional bonus live streams at least once, sometimes twice a month. For the past couple of months, I've been doing them weekly. You can go to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. Along with the bonus live streams, I share my comic book artwork before anyone else, additional work in progress images and animated GIFs, blog posts sharing about my process, my day-to-day life. You get it's like a creative online diary for you. You can see the whole Megillah. Patreon.com/Jeremy. And I've got some new Patreon subscribers that I would like to thank. I've got Justice M recently signed up, Jennifer G, and Vespertine Graphics. So wanted to give you guys a shout out, say thank you. I appreciate the support. I appreciate you being members of my community. We also have a thriving Discord server where we share artwork with each other in terms of our continued personal studies, growth, and learning and making creative works. So you can get all that at patreon.com/GERIMI. And if you'd like to get the best of my social media posts, again, they're animated GIFs of my comic book pages as they go through a developmental process. I post those, a few times a week. And instead of having to follow me on Instagram or Twitter and all those other places, which I appreciate if you do, but if you want them delivered right to your inbox on a monthly basis, you can go to newsletter.jeremy.net. I pick the best of my my social media posts, 1 or 2 live streams, little process update, all of that just goes straight to your inbox. I also have a free digital sketchbook you get there where you get like the raw pencil version of the first 3 issues of my comic book Morningstar, all for free. Newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you would like to purchase physical copies of my comics, my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods, psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. It's a done-in-one, self-contained black and white graphic novel. You can get that at amazon.jeremy.net. You can also get my current series, Morningstar. It's an 8-issue series. Lucifer's Fall from Heaven told as a Western. Volume 1 has issues 1 through 4. I'm currently working on the final issue right now, and you're going to see me working on that. But if you want to get these either in hard copy or if you're one of our international viewers, shipping is pretty expensive. You can read it on Comixology or Amazon Kindle. All of that at amazon.jeremy.net. So thank you so much, and let's get into the stream. See, Martin's in the chat already. Hey, Martin, how's it going? I am doing well. Again, I don't want to say slogging, because every day that I get to make art is a gift. But finishing up this final issue, yes, I chose to make it a double-sized issue. But it's still taking, well, let me put it this way, even if I hadn't made it a double-sized issue, part of the reason why I chose to make it a double-sized issue is because logic would say, well, if I've got that much material, why not make it a 9-issue series instead of an 8-issue series? That would be 1 more cover to draw. This story is 40 pages. I would have had to flesh out another 8 pages. And while I was it was very hard it was impossible to cram everything I wanted into a 24-page issue, which is what most of the other issues are. It would have been dragging things out to make the issue, to take that and pad out another 8 issues. So I couldn't fit it all into 24. Didn't want to drag it out with an extra 8 pages. Yeah, I could have written a little backup, feature to go in those last 4 pages or something. But I think just as much as I enjoy this, I am a little mentally exhausted and looking forward to wrapping the series up. So Martin says the page looks really good. Thank you. This is, I guess, the first time in the series where we see Lucifer looking like what we think of as Lucifer. This is after the fall. All of the over the past week, I was able to finish the pages that are the rest of the epic battle between Lucifer and Michael. And so this is after he's been cast out. So now I'm just going through and I'm alpha locking all of the layers for each panel so that I can go in and add the the specific tones. You know, I will show you the page I did just before this because I'm actually pretty happy with how that came out, because it's a very, very simple page. And all it is just like, you know, a tiny little speck of light falling through the darkness. And then all these other specks following Lucifer, which are all the other fallen angels and demons that sided with him in the war. And then when they get to whatever the bottom of infinity is, there's just this impact and this explosion. And that's basically the creation of hell or pandemonium. And so that's, you know, it's kind of bookending the beginning of the series, because the beginning of the series is children discussing the origin of the demons that have been plaguing heaven. And now we're seeing the origin of hell. So we see sort of the origin of heaven in a very simple way in the very first pages of Morningstar. Now in the closing pages, we're seeing the origin of hell. So I'd like to think that I wrapped things up in a nice circular little bow. I am proud of it. While there's pages in every issue that I would redraw, I'm proud of how the whole thing is coming out. I'm glad to bring it across the finish line. Let's see. Yeah, Martin says that the page looks really good. I think I may have read that already. My brain is a little loopy. I just woke up a little while ago. I tend to do that. I have an alarm set to wake me up because Sunday is like the one day I really sleep in. And so my alarm wakes me up in time for the live stream. So I'm a little loopy, drinking some coffee. And Martin said, nice storytelling. Thank you. Amaris is here in the chat. Thank you for joining us. She says happy Easter. Happy Easter to all of you as well. Hope you're happy and healthy and able to be with family or loved ones. Let's see. Martin says very cinematic. Yeah, well, thank you. Some people bristle at the idea of comparing comics and film. And I 100% agree that there are things you can do in comics that you cannot do in film, that they are two different mediums. And, you know, there's things in film that you can't do in comics. That said, I find that there's so many visual storytelling devices in film and compositional devices that while I do agree that comics is its own unique animal, I very much love pulling from film. I mean, I do find that even though I don't watch that many movies, when I'm making a comic, I am basically closing my eyes and I'm looking at that mental film strip in my head. I'm watching the movie in my head and then just trying to get down those actions and those moments, those beats, those feelings. So the fact that it feels cinematic, I would say thank you that it hits the spot that I'm aiming for. So, Amara says I've got an ear infection. You know, it's always something. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope that usually, you know, you get a couple of eardrops from the doctor, and that can kind of just get in there and clear it right up. I've had ear infections before; they're no fun. I hope that it heals quickly. And I hope it's not getting in the way of you doing anything creative. So hope you're still able to make time for that. Yeah, at this point, it is just me with this series, just bringing it across the finish line. Let's see. And it's odd because I try to force myself, like I shouldn't even be putting in tone or flats on Lucifer yet, because I try to force myself to do the environment first and then do the character second. If anything, it's good practice for drawing landscape studies. Speaking of which, as we're getting close to the end of Morningstar, I was talking with a friend of mine about what's next, and I've mentioned it in the past, but I feel like it's worthwhile because not everybody catches every live stream. And plus, different people show up and have different thoughts on it. But what I am thinking about for the rest of 2021 is that you guys are not probably going to see a new comic book from me until next year, until probably about this time in 2022. And what I'm going to be doing over the course of this year, over the rest of this year and the start of next year, is I'm going to be developing my writing practice so that I'm going to be writing every day, whether I finish a book or not, so that I always have a story that's ready to go. And I'm going to be doing two things. One is experimenting with my comic book style. So I'm just going to be doing a bunch of standalone pieces to try and find a style that is faster, so I can actually put out comics more frequently. And also a standalone style where I'm going to be making just artwork, not artwork for the sake of artwork. I'm trying to think of the right phrase. Well, part of the reason why it is difficult for comic book artists to make a full-time living doing comic books and often have to have other gigs. I mean, I have a day job and I'm very lucky to have that job. I enjoy it. It's fun. It's a creative day job. But part of the challenge of making comics is just that it takes so damn long. And it takes a lot less time to make a standalone single piece of artwork. So what I think I'm going to be doing is experimenting with doing standalone pieces where I'm going to start selling more prints and originals of just single image artwork. So I'm going to be experimenting over the next year with just making standalone images, selling originals, experimenting with a faster style. The next comic book is going to be digital. So I'm going to be, diving into that digital pool. I mean, obviously, right now I'm doing digital gray tones in Procreate, but I am going to try making my first fully digital comic book. And yes, I know there are people who will decry that, say it is blasphemy, it's traditional or nothing. But there are also people who are able to get work out very quickly because they're working digital. And for me, it would just be foolish to not, here's the thing. If I were already super fast as a traditional artist, I probably would not care. I wouldn't be thinking about working digital. But given that speed is one of my biggest issues, it behooves me to at least give that a try. I mean, that said, also, part of the reason why I'm not as fast as I would like to be is the learning curve. I always tell you guys, yes, I've published a couple of books, but I am by no means a master draftsman or a master storyteller. I still am constantly learning, growing, experimenting. And I think that in that process of trying to learn, I don't draw quickly because I'm working on just trying to get it right. I'm trying to make it not suck. And that extra effort, I think, of improving my craft as I go is another thing that slows me down. So part of this is also having a not give a shit style. Because I mean, I talked to my buddy Carl Altstetter a lot, comic book professional, friend, mentor, occasional guest on the live stream. And he was the one who introduced me to the concept of a deadline style. That idea that when you've got a project and it's due, you have to be able to shift gears, and you may not do all of the beautiful detailed rendering that you normally do. And it doesn't mean that you are doing crap work. It means that you're doing work that tells the story, that is visually satisfying, and gets the project out the door on time. One of the frequent people that we cite when we've discussed it is John Romita Jr. because, he definitely, for somebody who sometimes does 2 books a month, like John Byrne level, Jack Kirby level, there's definitely times when he's got a lot on his plate, and he's definitely mentioned on it that he's got, a gear that he shifts into where he's getting the pages out the door. And when you look at it, it does not look bad. It doesn't look like, oh, he's a hack. No, Romita is never a hack. His stuff is always beautiful. But there's times when he just gets down to the business. This is what I need to do to tell the story. And I, having only done self-published comics, never having to, really deal with deadlines other than blowing my own deadlines. But Yeah, Martin also mentions in the chat, and he says, also, you have a full-time job, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, the full-time job eats up the majority of my time. And again, I've said I enjoy it. I'm lucky to have it, but it keeps me from putting out as much work as I would like to. So the whole thing for me, the rest of 2021 and early 22 is about figuring out how to make more art with the time that I have. That's my major goal here. There's going to be a lot of experimentation, a lot of one-offs. You know what you're going to see me do a lot is a lot of master studies. One of the things that I do, or that I notice, one of the big challenges for artists, for visual artists, is that we want to reach a point where we no longer have to think about what we're drawing, so that we can just focus on the storytelling. If you have such a mastery of draftsmanship, of anatomy, perspective, light and volume, that you can pretty much draw whatever you imagine, when you reach that point, then you can just focus on the storytelling. It's just pure storytelling. And, you know, that's very freeing. For me, I am still at a stage of my visual development where a lot of times when I'm drawing, I have to figure out what this is that I'm drawing. I'll look at it and I'm like, no, that's not right. And again, I think that you should use reference generally. You know, it's not just when you don't know what you're doing, but I think that reference for me is very powerful, very necessary. But my greater point is that a lot of times, a big chunk of my work day at the drawing table is just figuring out, oh, wait, how do I make this arm look right? How do I make this hand look right? How do I make this building or this wagon look right? What's the perspective here? I need some reference for this coat. You know, that sort of thing. The bits and pieces that help you figure out what you're actually drawing. And I think that somebody who is very good and experienced, especially with reference, they know how to find the exact reference they need, get it, look at it, figure out where its place in their workflow is, and just knock out the piece. So that's not to say that when one reaches a level of mastery with draftsmanship, that it means, oh, you don't need to use reference anymore. No, because I still hear that whole argument online about, is reference cheating? It's not cheating. It's just part of the process. Now, it is very useful if you don't need reference for every little thing. Like if you have enough of a mental Rolodex of hands in your head, or buildings, or you've got like a couple of stock cars that you know how to draw in your head, then what that does is it means that you only really have to look up the very, very unique stuff. But there can be a bunch of common elements in your comic pages or in your artwork that you don't necessarily have to look up every time you're drawing them. That is very useful. That does save you some time. But there's always going to be things that you're going to need reference for. I mean, here's an interesting idea. For someone who says that they absolutely do not use reference and that reference is cheating, I'm like, well, who are the artists that you would say, who are the artists who would say that? And what does their work look like? And do you want your work to look like their work? You know, here's an interesting question. I wonder if Mobius uses reference. Because I mean, you look at his work, I mean, his Western comics, yeah, they have to be referenced. But when you look at his sci-fi fantasy work, it is so out there. You know, I presume that he used reference even for that, but I'd be curious. Let's see here. Paul's in the chat. Hey, thank you for joining. He said, just here for a moment because I need to study. leave a like and disappear. That's my tactic. Thank you. Thank you for popping in. You know, the replay will always be here. So definitely feel free to drop by later and catch the rest of the stream when you can. But please study hard, do well. That's important. Yeah, I think when it comes to using reference, you might presume that it'd be the more cartoony artists that don't use reference. I wonder, you know, Will Eisner. I wonder what his thoughts on reference are. I should go back and reread that. I have that book, the Eisner Miller book, where it's Will Eisner and Frank Miller just hanging around, talking shop. I also have the DVD documentary of Will Eisner. I think it's called A Sequential Life, whatever. I can't remember the exact name of it, but one of the bonus features is all of the audio recordings of Will Eisner's book Shop Talk, where he just had interviews in a magazine that he used to publish. It was just interviews with other creators. He's got interviews with Jack Kirby, Neil Adams, Joe Sinnott, all kinds of amazing comics luminaries. The Gil Kane interview in there. Just great interviews. I've had that book since it came out in, I want to say, the late 90s. But to have the audio of those interviews is like, it's like having a Will Eisner podcast, which, I mean, I think if you guys are listening to this, you people who like to sit and listen to other artists talk about creative process, and to have a Will Eisner podcast, I swoon. I swoon. Let's see. Pavel says, I will check out the rest. And he says, love the panels and the style. Really impressive. Thank you very, very much. Anytime someone has kind words to say about my work, I am grateful for it. Because like all of you, I always feel like I'm always working to get things to where I want them to be. I'm always trying to improve and push my work to the next level. Let's see here. Just trying to figure out. I wonder if I should make the ground that's around Lucifer not so bright. Like, I'm wondering if I should flip this for better contrast. The way that I've got the light that's on the ground here, I'm wondering if I should make that a darker tone and make Lucifer a lighter tone. You know, let me come in here before I get too caught up in that and add a little bit more detail to these demons in the background. Pavel says, I have to go. It was good to see you and listen to you. Stay safe and see you in the next stream. Bye. Thank you. Thanks for popping in. You know, part of the challenge, I think, in doing these final pages, well, in doing any of these pages, is trying to find just the right amount of detail. Trying to find what is and it's not like I'm trying to cheat the reader by not giving them detail. It's that for the most part, I think in most visual storytelling, I do think that more is less. Like if you find the balance of what is the bare minimum that the story needs in order to read and resonate with people, that's usually better than something that's overly detailed. And I know that there are people who love a visual feast and love like, I think, you know, sometimes we joke about, we call it render porn, where it's just like so much hatching, so many lines and super detailed. And I like super detailed work too. Like for instance, Jeff Darrow. Jeff Darrow, super detailed. I love his work. But I know for me, I definitely lean more towards sort of the Alex Toth minimalist school. And while it probably is not healthy to go around envying other artists, just the other night while I was working on the page before this, for some reason it occurred to me that while I consider Ashley Wood and Bill Sienkiewicz two of my biggest influences in terms of arts, I was thinking if I could be any comic book creator, like if I not be them, but if I could have their draftsmanship, their visual storytelling approach, their work, if I could have their creative capacity in all levels, both in terms of craftsmanship and speed, I would probably pick Chris Samnee. Because when I look at his work, I'm not sure what book he's on right now. Like I saw a lot of his Black Widow stuff. I know he had a run with Mark Waid on, I want to say, I can't remember if it was Daredevil and Captain America, but I know he's been working with Mark Waid for a while now. And but it was mainly mostly his oh wait, no, right now I guess he's doing that book with Robert Kirkman. So he's been doing that for a while. Have not seen that yet. I look forward to checking it out. Point being is that when I look at Chris Samnee's work, he is a creator who he looks to me like a modern day Alex Toth. Like he has found that sweet spot between beautiful art and efficient storytelling. You know, it just like it feels like it's just perfect. He never feels like he's cheating you on the draftsmanship on the drawing, but he gets just what you need to tell the story, and because of that, everything reads that much more dynamically. He is somebody who it would behoove me personally to study his work more, given that the speed is a direction that I'm trying to pick up with. Him and Phil Noto. Phil Noto is probably closer to what I imagined in terms of like the Ashley Wood, Bill Sienkiewicz of it all, like having something that's a little bit more painterly and loose. Because again, my stuff, as you can tell, I mean, it doesn't look loose when you look at this page zoomed out. But when you zoom in, you know, I don't have precise hatching. I don't have precise line art. And it may look crisper on a screen to you, but when I look at this, hell, I've got the actual pages here on my wall. I can look at them. And I do a bit of comparisonitis. I don't say that to knock my work, but I do look at what other creators do and kind of say, all right, when I look at it, I don't say, where do I stack up in order to beat myself up? I look at other artists in terms of saying, where can I push myself? Seeing other artists that are contemporary comic book artists that are doing it full time and they're putting out amazing work, I look at them as lighthouses. So it's not envy with a negative sake. It's more of they are showing me what's being done right. They're showing me what's possible and saying I can reach farther. So I always try to take these things that, like envy and comparisonitis. I mean, anybody who's been watching me for a while now knows my whole thing is to try and take negative self-talk and turn it into something positive. And I think that, again, comparing yourself to other creators is generally something that people say, don't do it, it'll drive you nuts. I try to look at it in a way that is both flattering to the person that I'm studying and just saying, I really appreciate and admire what you do, then also saying that they're, it's like the Green Lantern, they're a light in the darkness, and it gives me something to chase. So Martin says Shakespeare says brevity is the soul of wit. Well, that's a great quote. Yes, I've heard that before. And I think, again, that makes me worry about myself in that people watching this live stream know that I ramble like a mofo. So I don't know what that says about me and my wit. But it is true. And all of this might just be part of my personal creative journey in the sense that I may spend a year experimenting with a bunch of stuff, and I'll come out and I'll say, yeah, I don't like this stripped down look. I'm going to go do painted comics, which that is something that I always wanted to do. And I actually studied painting in my my undergraduate degree. I have a BFA in painting and drawing. So traditional, and it's odd because the program was really not specified towards illustration. But, draftsmanship was always, drawing was always my thing. So I guess that's just, that's what they gave me a degree in. I say that like I didn't have any choice in the matter. And I always say that that's the one sad thing about college is that anyone who has a bad college experience, whether it's in fine art or some other field, and there are lots of other, well, not lots of others, but marketing is a great field to get into if you're going to be any type of creative person. I've said before that if I had to do over again, I probably would have been a marketing major. I would have either asked if I could have like some sort of double major between art and marketing, because that's probably one of the most powerful skills that the independent artist, like even if you're just going to be a freelancer, marketing is an incredibly powerful skill to know. But I apologize, I keep clearing my throat. A little water here. But regardless of what I would or would not have studied, people come out of college saying, some people come out and it's the best experience they ever had. Some people say it's the worst. With me, it was a good experience, but it was more of a good experience because of the friends that I made and continue to have, as opposed to because of me learning, anything that was learning a lot that was as valuable as you would hope for how expensive college is. But what I did not know then, and I know now, is that you can learn anything in college if you know what you want. If you're determined and you say, all right, there's something I want to know that they're not teaching at this school. Hell, I mean, honestly, they had a computer lab. I could have learned 3D animation in there, even though they didn't have a 3D animation program, if I had just simply gone to the dean and said, hey, I want to learn this thing. They're not teaching it in my program. They're teaching it in another department, but I'm not part of that department. How do we make this happen? Maybe it would have meant I would have switched majors out of the fine art major. Maybe it would have meant just getting the dean of the design program to sign off, which is funny because now I'm a designer in my day job, yet I did not want to be a design major when I was in undergrad. Just did not like computers as much then as I do now. But that's something, and this is actually worth mentioning for any younger viewers listening now. If your program doesn't teach you what you want, it doesn't mean that you're just stuck. I mean, yeah, sometimes the only answer is switching to a different school, but more often than not, just going to your particular instructor, the head of your department, and just saying one-on-one, this is what I want to do. It is not, acknowledge that it's not available, and say, how can we make something special for me? Because a program will, schools will often create like kind of a unique program for a student if they show the initiative. And that is something that I didn't know in college. I mean, the thing I did end up doing was using up a lot of my electives on, I've told this before, but I ended up using up a lot of my electives on the animation program, which you cannot get an undergraduate degree at UCLA in animation. It's only a graduate program as part of the film school. But they let the undergrads take the entry-level courses. So I used up a lot of my my art electives my junior and senior year studying animation. And that's really, I think, where I learned the most about draftsmanship and visual storytelling was in that program. Yeah, if you go to and that I didn't even need to get anyone to sign off on. The film program, I think I had to go talk to the head of the film program first and show him my portfolio to get in. I'm trying to remember. I don't think that they just let people into that program, into that class. But when I showed him my work, and he was just like, "Oh yeah, you're perfect for this." It wasn't difficult to get, is my point. It was just a matter of getting the approval. And I'm rambling. My larger point is, for those who are concerned that they're not getting what they want out of college, or they're in a program that maybe doesn't have all the things they want, or they're just not in a major that's giving them what they want. It's a matter of going to the people who run those departments, going to your instructors, and it's not complaining. It's saying, "Hey, I want something that I'm not getting here. Will you help me? Or do you know who I have to talk to within the program to get that help?" Because you may have instructors that suck and they're just like, "Yeah, sorry," and that's all they have to say. But most instructors genuinely do want to help their students. And, I got my first paid job outside of college from one of my instructors. Not him personally, but there were some people that came to UCLA looking for students that draw, to do concept art for an idea that they were developing. And I don't know how they ended up coming to UCLA, other than the fact that the actual offices were close to the school. But my instructor, I wasn't in the class that they came and talked to, but my instructor, knowing my work, knowing that I was interested in comics, having seen it, my drawing teacher for in my junior year, he made it a point when he saw me in class to give me their contact information, so go talk to these people. They're looking for artists that do what you do. And I went there, and I got the job. So that was my first paid job out of while I was still in college. It was actually hard. It's too late now. I've got the degree, so I can't really take it back. My senior year, I got the job, but I didn't have the time in my schedule to go over there. So what they did is they called it a paid internship. So I was able to get credit so I could take time off from class to go work. That was brilliant. So yeah, I was getting credits and getting paid and learning on the job. So that was a win-win. That's baller move right there. I lucked out on that. Let's see. Martin says that my work, he says, your work reminds me to some degree of Timothy Truman's Scout, which, first off, Tim Truman, amazing artist. Thank you. I have never read Scout, but I have a collection of a reprint of the old first comics, the first trade of Scout. I have it. It's sitting on my bookshelf. I bought it a few years back because I bought it exactly for the reason I just told you. I have not read it before, and Tim Truman is one of those artists who, there's certain creators like Truman and Mike Grell where I've seen issues here and there of their work. I know of their impact on the comic book industry, but I haven't read a large body of it. So I bought Scout specifically because it's one of those indie comics that a lot of people talk about as a benchmark indie comic in terms of both the storytelling and the artwork. And I've seen some of Tim Truman's work back on the Vertigo, pardon me, the early Vertigo Jonah Hex before the Jimmy Palmiotti Justin Gray run. There was I think it was Tim Truman and I want to say Joe Lansdale. I think they did a couple of Jonah Hex miniseries, and I read those and I liked them, and I liked Truman's art. But I've always been meaning to dig more into Scout. You bringing that up has made me. I have a huge stack of books to read. I'm gonna slot Scout in like the next bulk of books I'm gonna read. Right now, I'm finishing up some Alan Moore stuff. I've been reading Alan Moore's League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I'd already read volumes 1 and 2, and right now I'm reading volume 3, or it might be the 4th. No, it is volume 3, but it's called Century. And it's got like 3 stories that take place in different time periods. What's odd is it's it's written, or not it's written, it was published in three oversized volumes before it was collected in a larger trade. And I bought them off of the shelf when they were coming out. So I only have volumes 1 and 2. So I don't have the whole collected trade. I just have the 1910, 1969, and then there's a 2009 volume that I have not read. So that's the next thing that I'm gonna read the first two, because I will tell you that I enjoy it. I'm gonna finish it, but I don't feel the need necessarily to read the last volume. And sometimes that happens. It doesn't mean that I dislike Alan Moore. I love Alan Moore's work, but I just read this one and I read the first two volumes, and based on those, I'm like, I don't desperately feel the need to get to the end of that. So I'm going to move on to some other books that are on the list. One of which is Tim Truman's Scout. You know what? Let me undo this. And I think I've got all these areas on Lucifer that are kind of where his flesh is burned away. Yeah, for me, most of the stuff, my work is so simple that there's not a lot of rendering in here. It's mostly flat color, or flat tone, as it were. That may come in with a tone that's a little bit lighter on top. Let's see here. You know, it is nuts how quick the time goes by. Like, a lot of times I think about these live streams, and sometimes, I do end up going for, like, 90 minutes or 2 hours, but it has already been 43 minutes. There's my general approach is to try and jump around the page and develop it all kind of evenly. But I think there's something to be said for getting in here and just working on one panel, in terms of, like, just letting you see one panel get to a certain level of development. Because the last few live streams, I felt like I got on here, I started working, started talking, and as I went, just talking, answering a few questions here and there, I didn't really get to show much. I didn't really get to an endpoint that was, I think, interesting for you guys to see. Oh, this is how this comic developed. Whereas coming in here and just working a panel does just that. Try and add a little bit of, wonder if that should be even lighter. A lot of times when I'm doing these gray tones, it ends up being less about what the local tone of an object would be, less of what the actual values in terms of light and dark would be, and it ends up just being contrast. And I think that that's another challenge for any artist, is knowing when to try and make something look correct versus when to make something read. I can't remember what comic creator said it, because I'm sure many comic creators have said it, but that idea that if it looks right, it is right. Because sometimes you can labor to make something look correct, quote unquote correct, and it just falls flat because it doesn't read well, it doesn't pop. But that is also to say, you can't just say, oh, well, I just draw this way because it's my style. You know, if you're doing stuff and it doesn't look right, see, that's the whole thing. If you do something and it's not quote unquote, if it's breaking the rules, but it looks correct, then again, it's correct. I guess that's the real lesson here, is don't try to break the rules unless you can make it look good. But in this, I'm definitely not following. Like, for instance, when I go between the areas where his flesh is burnt off, you know, realistically, that should be a darker value. But I'm using the same value across all of these to outline Lucifer. And even with this, it's like, where's the light source? The light source is kind of generally above, like stage lighting. But, you know, they just fell through the abyss of the darkness. I mean, it's almost like there's just like this low level, like lava-like glow around everything. That's kind of how I'm lighting this, is that there's this weird ambient light that's pervading the area. But it's not a specific, you know, it's not an actual specific, oh, here is this light source. I'm probably using more stage lighting than I am anything else. Oh, you know what? And that is something in terms of like being adamant about the difference that comic books are not film. I can't remember who it was I was listening to talking about it in an interview, but going back to Eisner Miller, and I think they may have talked about this in their book, that Will Eisner felt like comics had a lot more to do with theater. So it's still, you know, a performative space, but instead of it being all of the cutting and cross-cutting that films have, Will Eisner definitely saw the comic book panel as a stage. And I am parroting things that I have heard other creators say. It's not like I noticed this and I'm sharing my wisdoms about Will Eisner with you. It's things I've heard other creators talk about, and I'm mentioning it because it's just on my mind and relevant to what I'm doing here. Let's see. Martin says, I can easily discern 3 planes in the first panel. The smoke separates one of them very nicely. And he said, oh, in terms of if it looks right, it is right. He says, I think Toth said that. Yeah, that's something he said. All right, so this panel, there might be more that I could do to it, but for the most part, I feel like I tend to be on the team of get out while the getting's good. So if the page looks like it's working, then again, it's like, if it looks right, it is right. If it looks like it's working, leave it alone. There might be little things that I can finagle with, but they're probably things that only I am going to notice. You know, the reader probably will not. And if the reader's not going to notice, then what am I doing it for? Yeah, just a couple more in there. All right. So now looking at the whole page, more often than not, I jump around in terms of like I look at what are the standout panels, the dark and the light. Um, Although I'm looking at this panel and I see right here the fact that this is sort of supposed to be a dim lighting scenario, it makes it pretty easy to just come in and block this whole thing out. Make my brush a little bit larger. So I'm going to cut across these demons, so I can come back and I can add some dark in around their heads and the parts that are breaking this area that I'm framing out. But this way I can do this. I can drop in. They call that a color drop. In Procreate, the color drop is just a paint bucket. And I'm upping the threshold to try and make that little line between where I filled it and the boundary disappear. Pardon me, I have to blow my nose. Not cute, not sexy, but starting to get warm in LA. Allergies are kicking up again. Hey, Skull! Trevor's in the chat. Good morning. How you doing, sir? We are cranking along here. I am on page 38 of the 40-page final issue of Morningstar. So this page, 2 more pages, and redoing the cover, and we are out. So it feels good to be in these final legs, this victory lap, as it were. Let's see. And I'm trying to decide here. At first, the thing is, I see this scene being very dim. So I wanted to kind of spotlight Lucifer, much in the way that I've got this spotlight in panel 1 around him. As I have him walking away from this pit that he just crawled out of, I also am kind of just implying ground texture. Like I don't need to draw in full-on rocks, but I can just put in these splotches that imply the path that he's walking away, almost like there is a spotlight following him. So again, this is that Eisner stage lighting that I'm continuing to play with. And what I was considering was, instead of making this area lighter, to make the ground that I first started drawing in there darker. But I also have to keep in mind that when I print this out to take a look at it, generally speaking, lighter reads better than darker. Like if I go with the page being dark around him, what the results are likely to get me is a page that's a little bit muddy, and then I'll have to come back, open these pages up, and look at them again and reevaluate the coloring. And I'm prepared for the fact that I already talking about taking a victory lap. Not that I want to jinx myself, but it is very, very likely that I will finish this, print everything out, review it, and then there will be panels that are too light, too dark, not enough contrast. And I'll have to come back, open this up again, and do some doctoring to at least a handful of pages. That's been my experience, is before going to the printer, it's always wise to print these out on my home printer and just see how they look. because what I draw on the monitor is not the same as what comes out on the page. Trevor says he's good. I would miss it if it could be helped. Well, I appreciate it. It's always good to chat with you, man. And now I'm getting into the area of I'm noodling a little too much because I feel like these textures that I'm implying here don't feel rocky enough. Like I feel like they should be in bigger chunks than I've drawn them there, and then there's too much small detail. But that is me getting in and noodling and refining where it does not necessarily need to be refined. This reminds me that one of the things that I think I need to do in this artistic study phase post Morningstar is doing some landscape studies or some environmental studies, because being able to draw convincing environments, I think lends a lot to visual storytelling. Let's see here. Make the underside of these cliffs a little bit lighter just to separate them from the hordes. And then for the most part, leaving all of these masses down here dark, and then just putting in little specks of light for their teeth and their eyes. Let's see. Buddy Jesse's in the chat. Says, Happy Easter. Happy Easter, Jesse. And Trevor says, truthfully, it's like being in the studio again with other artists talking in the background. Yeah, that's a great thing. I try to, I put on other podcasts where I listen to artists talking as well while I'm working. And yeah, hearing that process talk it's soothing and it's fun. It gives you, it sparks some creative juice in you while you're going, when you hear other people talking about their process. At least it does for me. And the nice thing is I can be working on a page and I'll be like, I don't know, I think this is wonky. Or I've had times when I've been drawing, live streaming, and someone will point out something that looks off. And I'll be like, you know that feeling where you don't want to fix it, but you've been caught? And you're like, yeah, I know, that's boo-boo. I got to tighten that up. That no one likes that feeling, but sometimes you need to get caught in the act. Keep you honest. At least keep me honest, I should say. No aspersions on other people's artistic integrity. But yeah. And to be honest, I really shouldn't get too caught up in this panel because it's such a tiny panel with little details. And by little, I mean insignificant details. All these gnashing teeth. That's the main detail here, is Lucifer's walking out of a pit of gnashing teeth. Yeah. Let's see. Amar's in the chat. And he says, hey, everybody. He says, late, but I made it. Trevor says, I hear you trying to find that fine line. Just so you guys know, I'm probably going to wrap it up here in about 5 minutes. I'm just going to come in and try to refine this panel here, get that balance of the simple versus the complex, and then call this one a day. I think that this, just drawing all these little teeth shapes in there, these little specks of white sticking out of these dark masses, it's that kind of contrast that makes the page, that makes the panel work, that will hopefully make it pop. But yeah, I need to come in here and take another shot. Yeah, all of that stuff that's around Lucifer is too much detail and is distracting. And it feels stupid to have to go in there and do the same work twice. And it also feels stupid. This is an interesting thing. When they talk about animation, one of the reasons why I think animation is so challenging, when I'm talking 2D drawn animation and animated styles, is that when you're drawing in a simpler style, you have to, you're using fewer lines, but they have to be the right lines. And that is the challenge that I am facing right now, is just trying to get the right lines. Because realistically, what I need here is a large, and this actually should be angular. That's I think the problem I made, is I made it a little bit too bloopy. I need to make this an angular blotch containing Lucifer's lower torso. A second angular blotch closer to the demons. A third angular blotch that is also heading still towards the demons, but now it's offset from the one I just drew. So it's creating kind of a zigzag pattern. And then a tiny little blotch in there. And maybe one blotch that's just off to the side. If I can make these lines come to a little bit more of a point, not as rounded. That's the challenge here, is trying to do that animation level of fewer lines, but the right lines. And that is one of those things that's like a lifetime of skill to develop. Like that whole thing where Picasso, somebody asks him to do a sketch and he does it, and that'll be like $5,000. Which I've heard that the same thing has happened with Sergio Aragonés as well, where somebody came in and asked him to do a sketch, and he sat down and he just did it super quick, and it was however much an Aragonés sketch is, which, not cheap, but it's Sergio. It's worth it. And I think somebody was in both the story that is apocryphal about Aragonés. I don't know this to be true, but both in the Picasso case and in the mythical Sergio Aragonés case, the person was grousing about how they were paying so much for something that was done so quickly. And the response was, you're not paying for a sketch that took 5 minutes. You're paying for the 30 years experience to allow me to do a sketch that good in 5 minutes. Which, check in with me in another 20 years. We'll see if I'm there. It's okay for me to be a little self-deprecating. It's better than being an arrogant prick. Yeah, see, this simpler, fewer details. This is very much one of those less is more scenarios. Because the detail of it being more, all of those more tiny little marks around Lucifer draw attention away from Lucifer. And the whole point of this is that visually, yes, it's Lucifer climbing out of a pit of demons, but all of those little marks of demons in there versus the contrast of this empty space around him once he stepped out of the pit that's a form of visual contrast along with the light and the dark. So that's what I was, that's what I'm going for. That's a bit better. Let's see here. Amar says, I've been doing more research into NFTs and cryptocurrencies. He says, I heard about Bitcoin in 2012, never looked into it. I wish I had, but that's not the first rich, wealthy bus I missed. I hear you. I feel you on that one. I've been thinking about it as well, but I mean, the problem is we can only do so many things at once. And for me, with this mental goal of trying to wrap up Morningstar and put that away, it's like I feel like I don't have the mental bandwidth to take on some other thing to chase or follow. Another money making. I mean, it does feel like a bit of a money making scheme, quote unquote. If there's a way for independent artists to cash in, I'm all in favor of that. And hopefully that's exactly what it'll be. And I can start minting those NFTs without destroying the environment, because I hear that it just takes a tremendous amount of energy to actually, to produce the algorithms for each NFT. So I think that, but I also hear that people are working on that problem. So maybe the environmental thing won't be that big of a deal. Amar says, so a goal for me this year is micro investing in crypto and selling NFT art, with some crap being sold for 4 to 6 figures, even 8 to 7 to 8. We'll see. I mean, that's the problem with the fine art world. There's lots of stuff that we look at, people who actually put in the work in terms of draftsmanship, and are like, why are people paying money for this? This takes no artisanal craft. A lot of the times it's a rich person's game. It's a way of parking money in investments and moving money around without being taxed on it. So it really has nothing to do with us as the individual creators and the skill that's taken to make it. They pick the people that they want to anoint. There's a reason. I think that Jeff Koons, part of the reason, he does know how to draw and how to paint. But part of the reason why he's so successful is that he came from a background of working in investment banking and then just started selling his work to rich people. I think that it's one of those things which that whole blue chip art market world is much more about who you know than the actual quality of the work. So, and that doesn't mean that working class illustrators can't break into that market, but it definitely is much more of breaking in than it is being invited or welcomed into that market. So on that note, we're gonna cap this, guys. And for you guys who came in late, I'm sorry you missed it earlier, but I'm glad you were able to make it here and stop by even for a little while. It's always great to see you guys. You guys are my fam. I appreciate it every time you show up. Let's zoom back out to the main camera. And for those who enjoy these live streams, if you'd like to support this channel, get bonus live streams for as little as $2 a month. I've got tiers. I've got $2 tiers, $5 tiers, $10 tiers. I've got a $100 tier where you can get original art commissions work from me. All those are available for you at patreon.com/GERIMI. Yes, that's how you spell my name. No, it's not a stage name. That's how my parents gave me that name. So just Jeremy, but weird ass spelling. Regardless, makes me easy to Google. Patreon.com/GERIMI. Go there, subscribe, get all of the bonus content, comic book pages before anyone else. The newsletter.jeremy.net. I pop in some animated GIFs there showing works in progress, some blog posts and process updates. I'll link to 1 or 2 of the live stream replays, all delivered to your inbox once a month. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comics, my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods, psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control, self-contained, done in one graphic novel. Morningstar, the thing that you just watched me draw, the gray tone, the almost last page of Lucifer's Fall from Heaven, told as a Western. This book contains issues 1 through 4 of an 8-issue series. The rest of the series is available on Comixology. All of these are available on Comixology if you read digitally. These 2 volumes are available on Amazon Kindle. So you can get physical copies on Amazon. You can get them digitally on Kindle or Comixology, so you can start reading them right after this stream is over. You don't even have to wait for them to get shipped to you. So that is it. Guys, everyone, thank you for showing up. Amar says he'll let us know how it goes with the NFTs. And Trevor's like, oh, I just got here. I know, I'm sorry. I'm trying to keep these things to a tight hour these days. But hey, there's always the replay. You can listen to me ramble. You know what? Here's the crazy thing. People can listen to me ramble and then leave comments. So if you hear something and you're reacting to it, and you're like, I want to react in real time. I want to talk to Jeremy. I wish he heard this comment or that comment. Respond in the comments. That's why YouTube has comments. You can just go back and leave the comments later. I see them. I read them. I reply to them. If you ask, I can hold on to the comment and I can reply to it live on the next live stream. So that's the beauty of this internet world, is even when I'm not live, we're all interconnected, and we're all the web. The web, instead of entangling us, it's a mesh that's pulling us all closer. I would like to believe that. Let's in the world where there's a lot to be pessimistic about, let's hope for the best and optimistic about the ability for us to all be connected and swim in the same creative ocean and be on the same wavelength and spread those good vibes wherever it's possible to spread good vibes. We're fighting a spiritual war against the darkness, even though I'm doing a comic book about Lucifer. I know. I'm a man of contradictions. All right, people. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for supporting this channel. Hey, I never say this enough. Like the videos. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed. Hit the share button. Forward the link to some friends that you think might like it. Everybody. Amar says the kumbaya moment. Yes, it's the kumbaya moment. Have a good weekend, dude, and everyone else. Thank you. Same to you, Amar. Thank you to all. That's it for now. Go be creative.